What's going on, YouTube? Culturedog Sam Hatch back here with another Halloween film roundup, and I apologize for being a couple days late on this one for week 2. I'm trying to watch, a film for every night in the month of October, be it a horror film outright or just something Halloween related or something generally spooky. And I've been doing pretty good this month. It's been a good month so far. Last week when we left off, I had knocked out, the first couple Universal Monster films in that box set I had picked up. I think it was like an 8-disc box set from Best Buy with custom Alex Ross box and some postcards and all sorts of stuff like that. So I'd watched Dracula and Frankenstein. When I wasn't watching films proper, I was watching a butt ton of extras this week as well. So I revisited a lot of the stuff on those Dracula and Frankenstein Blu-rays, featurettes on the careers of Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff first off, and then there were some featurettes, some pretty decent hefty featurettes that had been ported over from previous releases. But there was The Road to Dracula with Carla Laemmle and The Frankenstein Files with David Skal, and I also listened to David Skal's commentary on Dracula because I hadn't listened to that in quite some time. So I fired all that stuff up again and also revisited some zombie action, because I mentioned that before the month proper started, I was digging back into Devil's Rejects. So I watched that 2 more times with both commentary tracks. There was the Rob Zombie commentary track, and then there was the cast one with Sid Haig and Cherry Moon Zombie and Bill Moseley. So, those were both fun, and it was interesting hearing like the same stories from 2 different perspectives sometimes. So I tore into all that stuff, and then I've also been listening to spooky related too. We're not buddies, but an acquaintance, a comedian acquaintance of mine, Dan Cummins, has been knocking it out of the park with his Time Suck podcast. I actually recently spun off a new podcast called Scared to Death, where I suspect it'll be short-lived. I mean, not that it's an awesome podcast, but the goal of it was basically his wife Lindsay is a scaredy cat, and he's going to read her stories and scare her to death, and then we all kind of either get scared or laugh, and everyone has a good time. But I suspect what's really going to happen is he's either going to scare himself so bad in the process or get her wound up so bad that it'll be impossible to live with her because she's scared all the time. Either one of those things will happen, and then just the podcast will disappear. But hopefully I'll be proven wrong. Enjoy it while it lasts. But yeah, he usually does like 2 spooky stories, true stories, and leaves it up to you whether or not you want to believe in them every week, and that's been fun. So I've been watching that too. There's a YouTube version too. They film it all, obviously, like everybody does now with their podcasts, but it's got cool ambience and everything on the YouTube version, so it's worth checking out. And so I've been watching all that stuff, and that's been a copious amount of extras and things like that. But film wise, the first film I watched for this second week was What We Do in the Shadows, Taika Waititi's film, which is great. And it's also been spun off into a television series, etc. I had seen it before, but I wanted to kind of throw on a horror comedy, and that's a fantastic one. A lot of improv style comedy, but I actually really like the special effects in it too, because there's a lot of cool levitation scenes, but mixed in with the mundane. There's been shows and films done before with domesticated vampires. There was Being Human, which was like a vampire, a ghost, and a werewolf living together. So it wasn't entirely breaking new ground, but it was fun. I mean, it was like different types of vampires, and there was the Nosferatu style vampire Peter that lives in the basement and doesn't actually talk, and Jermaine from Flight of the Conchords is in it. It's super cool. And it's just got a fun story. And if you love Flight of the Conchords, obviously you'll dig What We Do in the Shadows. But I was really impressed with just how much production value there was in it for this small New Zealand vampire comedy. Love it. What We Do in the Shadows. Up next, I finally got around to seeing the Blair Witch sequel, the proper sequel that came out a few years ago. It was originally called The Woods, and there was a big hubbub about it, and how it was released, and Comic-Con sneak preview and all that stuff. And then it came out and it kind of tanked, and people were saying negative thoughts about it, but then I had enough people recommend it to me, and I was enough of a fan of the original film, and even Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows has its moments, even though I think it took a wrong path in terms of its story and how it was brought about. But I mean, it does have its moments for sure. But I really wanted to check this out. It was going for a found footage vibe again, and it's a direct sequel to the original Blair Witch, and there's a connection to Heather Donahue in the film, yeah, it was entertaining. The cast was decent, and some characters were dicks, obviously, as one would expect in this kind of thing. But they were not so dickish that you immediately wanted to see them get killed. And it was able to up the production value quality, of course, with some, the original film was just like a lot of twigs and things like that, and effective noises. And this film takes a turn at one point where it actively goes for, the sound mix is insane. It was mixed for Dolby Atmos, and it's, the sound palette kind of starts off a little more confined because it's, ostensibly footage from, old cameras mixed with newer cameras and high-tech ear cameras. And, but yeah, at some point the sound just explodes and moves all around you. So while you have to kind of swallow that with a grain of salt as to why that would be. Obviously, somebody sweetened the sound. It is pretty effective. And the rebuilt house from the original film, everything that happens in there was pretty effective. It was a little too loaded with jump scares, and a lot of them were just kind of, I don't know, weakly executed. I was disappointed in how overly reliant it was on jump scares for the first half, but yeah, not too shabby. I definitely fire it up again, and it was fun watching the documentary on the Blu-ray. That was really good. But other people were correct. The commentary track is rough because it was recorded on opening weekend, and it's everyone was taking it hard that the film tanked, and there's a lot of sour grapes going on in that commentary track. But yeah, it was interesting. I was glad I finally got around to checking that out. So then I went back into documentary turf, and last week I had checked out a newer Night of the Living Dead documentary. This time I fired up Reflections on the Living Dead, which is a weird little mixed bag. It says it was a 2005 documentary, but it's really this weird mixture of different sources. Most of it a 90s roundtable discussion with Russell Streiner and George Romero and John Russo and Carl Hardman. Then there's some other pieces with Hardman and Marilyn Eastman. Bits talking about the music and the makeup effects and all sorts of things. So it is a really kind of interesting look at Night of the Living Dead from the people involved in it, but it's a way older documentary than anybody. I think it's a 25th anniversary thing, so around 93 or so I think the main footage was shot. But it is also interesting because it's got a lot of talking head footage of popular genre directors talking about the influence of Night of the Living Dead on them. So you got Wes Craven in there, and Sam Raimi, and John Landis, but it was cool seeing I forgot the gentleman from Cine Fantastique, but Chris Gore from Film Threat was there, and the Film Threat logo was on the wall, and I was having nostalgic flashbacks to when Film Threat was this, and Cine Fantastique were these big magazine rack entities, and so that was pretty cool. But the way it was kind of slapped together was a little funky. The beginning is really tough because it's just so much, every little thing is typed out slowly with cheesy synthesizer music, and it just takes forever. And then some guy, I don't know, ostensibly the director of this thing, shows up, and he introduces the film, and then it goes to about 8 million still shot images of the beginning of Night of the Living Dead, and I was like, come on, man, just get to the round table. But I mean, that the interviews with the cast and crew, were good meat and potatoes, and it was fun hearing from some other horror luminaries. Obviously, they were all impacted by Night of the Living Dead, no brainer there, but it was worth checking out. Audio quality wasn't the best at all times, but for what it is, it was worth seeking out on the Amazon Prime. Then we bounce back to one of my most controversial film reviews on this channel. People love to hate this movie, and then some people really enjoyed it. The 2018 re-sequel of Halloween, so David Gordon Green's film, And so yeah, I watched the Blu-ray and watched I wish the special features were a little bit longer. The kind of round table bit there with Jason Blum and John Carpenter and Jamie Lee Curtis and David Gordon Green, like that stuff was really interesting. There's even like bits in some of the other featurettes where there's footage of John Carpenter talking about something, but that never actually shows up in the little documentaries proper. So clearly there was an ass ton of stuff filmed. If you've seen any of the promotional materials for this film, they staged a bunch of media press stuff like outside in Haddonfield. So it looked cool. It was like a cool setting. And they must have done this promotional piece like at the same time as the big press junket. But so there must be ass tons of footage that they could have used for like a proper, big featurette. Like a nice 45-minute roundtable would have been great. But you get what you get. So I watched that again, and really enjoyed it again the second time. If I have any complaints, which is probably what everyone's looking for, because I get still to this day people complaining about how it's the worst sequel ever. I'm like, really? It's worse than 5, huh? On all fronts, this movie's worse than 5, huh? And 6? I don't know. Anyways, but if there was any like complaints, it was that the pacing is a little off, like it's a little too fast. There's some other kind of moments where, it's a little ham-fisted, like when Judy Greer's, doing the, pretending to lure Michael. It's kind of silly because, like, that's not going to really affect Michael in one way or the other. Like, he's going to show up and kill you, whether or not you're pretending to be hurt or you're pretending to be unable to go through with, facing him. Like, he doesn't care. Like, this isn't going to lure him any farther. Like, so I don't know, that whole like kind of gotcha moment seems a little goofy because it just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you're crying or whatever like that, it's not gonna, I don't know, he was gonna show up at the top of those stairs no matter what. But other moments other than that, I really like the characters again, and just watching them again like made me think and realize like how many films should have had John Carpenter's score in them. Like, it just makes it so much better. And there was a little bit too in the featurettes, showing him and Cody Carpenter and Daniel Davies doing the music, and the stuff with the bow on the guitar and everything is so cool. It's one of my favorite actual sounds in the score itself. But the sound mix was delightful. If I could use delightful in a review of a horror film, I really like the sound mix on that thing. So it was, and it's a great cinematography in the Blu-ray. I never did get around to picking up the 4K, so I just have the Blu-ray, but it didn't have any problems with the darks and all the shadows and everything like that. Really great cinematography, and I love that the podcasters were total douches too. So I still enjoy it. I watched it again. I don't know where it sits in my rankings. It's top 5 for sure, but I'll have to do a proper ranking video at some point and get everybody all riled up. So revisited Halloween. Then up next, I finally got around to seeing Train to Busan. And people have been telling me to see that ever since it dropped in theaters. Never got around to it. It was fun. It was like a fast, charged remix of Snowpiercer with 28 Days Later with a few other things mixed in there for good measure. And just a bad father and his daughter, and it's her birthday, and she wants to go see her mom. There's obviously a split going on there. And he doesn't want to travel out of town because of his job, and he reluctantly offers to bring her, against his will, basically, to go to this other town to see her mom. And at the same time, a semi-zombie-ish outbreak occurs, and Korea's overtaken by these fiendish, very fast. It's not the traditional Romero zombies, so that's why I was kind of referencing more. 28 Days Later, the Dawn of the Dead remake, that sort of thing. So they're and there's a little World War Z in there too, when they use their bodies as access to you if they have to, then they'll pile up on top of one another and that sort of thing. And it's just relentless. The characters were a lot of fun, including one character that turns out to be like total heel in the end, and you're just like rooting for his death. So it was good. Really, really enjoyed it. So obviously everybody likes it. It took me a while to see it. I want to see the animated prequel thing that's out there too. I haven't checked that out yet, so that's next on my list. But Train to Busan. Then I, speaking of, ill-received films, I revisited Joe Johnston's 2010 Wolfman remake. And I really liked that when I saw it in the theaters. And I enjoyed it again when I watched it on home video. I got a review copy of the DVD when it first came out with the director's cut. And then not too long ago, I actually upgraded. I found it on Blu-ray at like one of the cheapy stores somewhere, and I picked it up on Blu-ray. So I finally had a chance to sit down and watch it in HD. And still talking about sound mix, I love. Oh my God, I love that sound mix. So good. And it's not completely over the top and oppressive like a lot of Marvel films are, where it's just nonstop rumbling and you just look at somebody and it's just subharmonic frequencies. Just really good, rich, detailed surround field and a lot of great creepy noises out in the middle of nowhere. Oh man, some fantastic imagery. And it's just one of those films where I don't know, everybody just talks about how much of a failure it is, or how much of a a near hit it was, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, how did the scales tip? And in my case, the scales tip in the favor of there's enough for me to enjoy the film, from the mood to the even Benicio del Toro. Everyone kind of says he's stiff and kind of wooden in the film, akin to, not as much as Keanu Reeves and Bram Stoker's Dracula, but that's another film. I don't care how bad everyone says it is. That's like eternal favorite of mine, and the scales tip in the favor of so many cool things in it that it doesn't matter how wooden Keanu Reeves' acting is in it. But I love Benicio del Toro's like kind of emo Larry Talbot, and it obviously was a little bit of a mess. There was studio involvement and meddling and too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing, and it was just one of those projects that got passed around like a hot potato. Danny Elfman's score, which I actually really love, and it reminded me at the time of Wojciech Kilar's score for Bram Stoker's Dracula, but it got removed from the film, and I think Paul Hasslinger did another score, but then Danny Elfman's score got put back on it, but he didn't get to rescore the recut version of the film, so the score had to be kind of like massaged and manhandled to fit, so it's not actually scored to the imagery properly. So Danny Elfman kind of walked away with a little bit of sour grapes there. But the music was gorgeous. The visuals are gorgeous. There's some amazing bits of imagery in the film. But and you could say, it was just style over substance. But there's so many great moments in the film. The moments in London, the bit where he's being observed and the one gentleman is unaware that there's a transformation going on behind him is great. Running on the rooftops, by moonlight, and all the stuff for the gypsy camp, and there's some hyper violence and decapitations and some really gnarly kills in the thing. And I love the look of the werewolves and Emily Blunt, Benicio del Toro love interest moment. It's supposed to be, it should be weird because she's supposed to be grieving for a dead fiance, Benicio del Toro's brother, but we don't really hang out with that guy that much, so it ultimately doesn't matter. And I don't know, it's kind of hot. I don't know, the chemistry is really there, and at least there's something about it. It's got some juju to it for sure. It's not obviously 10 out of 10, but I'm just going to keep rewatching it forever, probably. So it's got zazz. It's got enough mood, enough style, and some interesting characters. And I don't know. I can't hate the Wolfman. I tried. I'm sorry. So then I figured, why stop with the reviled product then? And finally got around to firing up Alien Covenant, Ridley Scott's direct sequel to Prometheus. And I really enjoyed it. And it's funny because Prometheus and Alien Covenant are all about expanding, the mythology of the xenomorph, the alien character that H.R. Giger helped create for the original 1979 film, which just had some nice 40th anniversary screenings in my neighborhood this past week, but sadly I didn't get to go. My parents went, but I didn't get to go. I was too busy doing some other things. I actually watched Alien Covenant that night, actually, is what made me think about it. But it's funny because, these films really do no favor to that, because I don't actually like when mysteries are explained in horror films. So Alien definitely plays better with a feeling of there being an alien, a creature that's there that nobody knows is there, that nobody knows what it is, that nobody has encountered really in humankind's history. So these films kind of muddy those waters a little bit. But that said, they're so far disconnected from it, but attached to it. I don't know, like visually, that I'm really able to keep them kind of in separate compartments. And I really enjoy the mythology of Prometheus and Alien Covenant, and the David scenario, and it's got a great villain, and it's really interesting stuff. The visuals of the planet from the film were great and fantastic, and it was great seeing Danny McBride playing a non-total douche for once. But yeah, it was on the verge of Kubrickian for the most part, and I dug it. I thought it was great, and Fassbender on Fassbender, like those scenes with him, kind of encountering himself and having conversations and stuff was really cool, and a lot of good philosophical and strange mythology going on in the film. So yeah, I'm looking forward to another one. Hopefully, now that Disney owns it, they won't just kind of jettison that whole thing. But I'm looking forward to watching it again. So Alien Covenant, go figure. And then I finally got around to watching Tarafire, a film that everyone in the horror community was buzzing about a year or two ago, and I just never got around to watching it. And mostly because the one thing that was keeping me away from like really putting it at the top of my list was just the imagery of Art the Clown, the main character of the film, and for me the least interesting part of the film. Because I just all the imagery for the film was like just his face, and he just looked like my grandma. It was like Sam's grandma. Who wants to watch that movie? But the things he does is really interesting, and some of the other characters in the film. Obviously it's like a bit of a throwback to grimier films of days of yore, especially the 80s. And it goes for a kind of older aesthetic, but it's clearly a digital film, so they just made it look ugly in After Effects. It is pretty ugly. Like, blacks are usually brown, and all the colors are just kind of off for the most part. So it doesn't really do a great job at recreating the look of films of yore. But it is like kind of grimy enough, at least. And I like, the concept of keeping it, mostly in one spot, though it does kind of break free enough. There's the pizza place and some other locations. But, when it does go for the jugular, I really thought it had a lot of energy to it. And obviously it was, trying to appease just total gore hounds because, there's just, so much over the top gore in your face in the film. But, it had enough of a slow burn as well. I was actually impressed with the attention to character, building up some of the tension, these situations. And, but I don't know, like the Art the Clown character just didn't really connect with me. Like, like everything that he was doing and everything was causing tension. It was interesting, but like, I don't know. He just wasn't like super scary to me. But the way more effective thing was the kind of wraparound story of one of his survivors, which is kind of like, seemed like it was lifted from Gary Oldman's character from Hannibal. And, but the makeup on it was, almost reminded me a little bit of Sam from Trick or Treat without his mask on. But it was really kind of inventive and interesting looking, even if it wasn't entirely believable. And a lot of the effects in it are a little over the top and kind of, on the edge of goofy. Like, it easily could have pushed it a little bit more in one direction and had it be like, near snuff film. Is it a snuff film kind of quality? I don't know if they should have gone in that direction or if this is the right balance that they maintained. Was it Damien Leone did the film? The only thing, maybe it was the thing about Art, was that it kind of struck me as just a desperate attempt at creating an iconic horror character. And it's like, iconic horror characters are just kind of birthed. Like, if you're trying too hard to make one, it just looks like you're thirsty. Like, as much as I love Trick or Treat, like, Sam is like, I don't know, it's like they're trying too hard to make an eternal, beloved Halloween character. And it's like, and he was a cool character and everything, for sure. But you could just sense the desperation in the air. And that seems to be the same thing with Art. Like, the filmmaker's done some other short films, and it's all about Art the Clown. I don't really care about Art the Clown. Like, his endeavors and his things. If he had just been a dude, like, it still would have, everything he had done would have still been just as scary. And I think that was it too. Like the creepy clown thing just didn't really connect with me. He didn't really succeed on creepy clown level. So it should have just been, random dude. But that said, it pulled off enough stuff. Some of the scares were kind of telegraphed. But I did, think the actors and the characters and stuff were pretty good and watchable. And they did a really good job at towing the line of, one character, being possibly like a final girl or not. Like they kept tricking you out as to whether or not you think they would survive or not. So that was pretty good. And the locations were interesting and grimy, and it moved at a fast clip. But yeah, so I'm glad I finally got around to checking it out. So yeah, I'm kind of like in the middle on it, but I'm intrigued because the stuff that was kind of going for the gusto and was really nasty makes me think that future films from this director could be if he's not so obsessed with just Art the Clown, you could probably pull off some really, really interesting stuff. So we'll see. Anyways, that's week 2. I'm going to go back, watch a butt ton more horror movies. I'm trying to catch up on things like of recent years that people have been telling me to watch that I haven't gotten around to. And then, pepper in some just random, I feel like watching this tonight kind of titles. So yeah, that's the fun thing with this, because sometimes you want to like kind of dive deep and check out like strange things and oddities from the past. I know usually on the Facebook groups, everyone's trying to show off with like trying to be more obscure. So, I'm watching like Butt Nuggets. Like, what's that? I don't know. It's a movie that came out about like demons in your butt, and like 5 people saw it, and it was released on one video cassette. Everyone's usually kind of chasing that dragon to kind of prove how cult and indie they are. But no, I just kind of play it by ear. And sometimes it's like, maybe I'll play a little bit of catch up on recent stuff, or maybe I'll just watch whatever the hell I want to watch tonight. So I always appreciate that aspect of it. But it gives me a chance to pull things off my shelf that I like have been kind of sitting there for a while. And I'm like, I should probably throw this in the player. So I appreciate that aspect of it. It kicks me in the butt, makes me watch more horror films. Anyways, so that's week deuce. I'll go watch more films. We'll catch back with you guys next week. Cheers!